The idea that politics would play a role in big cases like this, it's absolutely ludicrous, and it's totally contrary to my experience as a prosecutor.
Yep, you recognize him. Former special counsel Jack Smith, standing by the 2 federal indictments he brought against President Trump that were ultimately dismissed. Smith was responding to the constant attacks from Republicans who accuse him of playing politics and weaponizing justice, instead arguing that's actually what the administration is doing right now.
You can't say, I want this outcome, let me throw the rules out. That's why, frankly, you see all these conflicts between the career apolitical prosecutors I worked with, because they're being asked to do things that they think are wrong, and because they're not political people, they're not going to do them. And I think that explains why you've seen the resignations, you've seen people leave the department. It's not because they're enemies of one administration or the next. They've worked through decades for different administrations. It's just they've been doing things apolitically forever, and when they're told, no, you got to get this outcome no matter what, that is so contrary to how we were all raised as prosecutors.
But the key point that Smith emphasized, there's nothing wrong with prosecuting people in power. What does matter, though, is why you're doing it.
The problem is not prosecuting high officials who did something wrong when you do it according to the processes of law in your country. It's the retaliation. That's the problem, and that's the thing that we should be preventing.
Joining me now, former U.S. Attorney and Deputy Assistant Attorney General Harry Litman. Also here, CNN legal analyst and former federal prosecutor Elliot Williams. Also the host of the podcast, Talking Feds. Of course, I'm talking about Harry Litman. Glad to see him and glad to see you, Elliot, as well. Let's start with you, Harry, on this point, because you heard those comments from Smith, a pretty explicit condemnation of how the DOJ, the Trump DOJ, is operating. This is someone who Republicans argue actually weaponized the department. So tell me what your reaction has been, the fact that he is speaking and speaking up and in this way.
Yeah. So as a former DOJer, I find it galling, my reaction to the Republicans, and I'm glad he's speaking up some. Look, this is really straightforward, and there's a way to know who's right and who's wrong here, and that is the facts and the law. We all saw the conduct that resulted in Smith's, at least its first case. Can you imagine what it would have been if the DOJ had said, a little insurrection, who really cares? That was a case that cried out for prosecution, and the facts and the law bore it out. And that was, and so the question's not who talks louder or what Jim Jordan says. And the irony, of course, that makes it even sort of doubly galling is Jordan also says blithely, or Republicans do, that they are not weaponizing. And again, it's not hard. Look at the facts, look at the law, look at the commands from Donald Trump, prosecute my enemies. And it's straightforward. They are promoting a kind of collective amnesia, or want to, in the country. And it's a very straightforward point. His calm professionalism said it, but Laura, we all saw it. We know that wasn't weaponization, and it's been pretty clear that this is. And of course, courts are going to take that up in the next few weeks.
Elliot, I want to turn to you, because what he was describing was essentially people reverse engineering a result. Here is the goal I want. Now figure out the facts or the evidence I can use to get that conviction. You do see, of course, that Smith is being investigated over potential violations of the Hatch Act by the Office of Special Counsel. This is yet another person on the list of people that we know the president takes issue with.
Right.
When you hear about that reverse engineering and thinking about this, what is the likelihood that these could be successful with a jury pool that's obviously watching and a bench that is saying, I see you?
Yeah, who knows what ends up being successful, Laura? I mean, I think the problem that the president and his folks have created is that even cases that might be legitimate, they put a cloud over them by talking so much about how they want folks to get prosecuted. So if you take the investigation into Jim Comey, even if he's guilty, or John Bolton, who might be indicted in the coming days, even if he is guilty and did commit the offenses.
To James, you could add to that.
To James, all of them. The fact that the president and others in the administration have been so forthright about wanting those folks to be prosecuted taints the cases. And so
Is it in short order as well? The timing, the back-to-back
I
that
think
you think raises issues?
the timing and and just the cumulative effect of all of them. And I think Jack Smith was getting into some of that there's nothing wrong with prosecuting prominent people. If Tish James broke the law, if Jim Comey broke the law, fine, they should go to jail for it. But the fact that there does appear to be a thumb on the scale from the White House really makes it hard to take any of those cases seriously.
Let's play what actually Jack Smith had to say about the former FBI Director James Comey, who you know has been indicted. Harry, listen.
This latest prosecution of the former director of the FBI. There's a process to secure an indictment, but the career prosecutors, the apolitical prosecutors who analyzed this said there wasn't a case, and so they brought somebody in who had never been a criminal prosecutor on days' notice to secure an indictment a day before the statute of limitations ended. That just reeks of lack of process.
Part of what Comey's team is complaining about, too, Harry, is that they believe that the case has got to be dismissed because Lindsay Halligan, who is the U.S. attorney in the EDVA, you were a U.S. attorney as well in a different jurisdiction. Yeah. They believe she has been unlawfully appointed, and they filed this notice of an intent that they plan to make this particular argument. What would they need to prove specifically to be successful there?
Can I tell you in a second? I just want to quickly say, as to Elliot's point, a taint or
sure,
reeks of
Harry.
lack of process.
Ignore the question I just asked. No, I want the answer to the question.
Constitutional.
I want
Okay,
the
I'm
answer.
sorry. All right,
Thank
let
you.
me go straight to Lindsay Halligan. What they have to prove is that after an interim appointment was completed, as it was, the person who was appointed, Lindsay Halligan, was not one of three things, and she really wasn't. It looks to me like a very solid case. Now, typically, if they prove it, and they say Alina Habba has the same problem as it's been found, but the question would be, what remedy? Can they go back and do it again? Here with Comey, though, they brought it specifically the last day of the statute of limitations. If that was a phony signature, who the heck is she on that piece of paper? I think he's got to go free because they cannot assemble an indictment for someone as to whom the statute has run. So I think it's pretty strong claim.
Harry, Elliott, more to come. Thank you so much.
All right, with us now is CNN senior legal analyst Ellie Honig. Ellie is the author of When You Come at the King, Inside DOJ's Pursuit of the President from Nixon to Trump. And Ellie, like a third of your book, sixth of your book is about Jack Smith and the investigation here. And I want to read a quote from that book because it deals really almost exactly with what Jack Smith is getting at. This is a quote from Abby Lowell, who is a defense lawyer, who said, Jack is smart, dogged, hardworking, and a true public servant. He is not biased and he's not political, but he can also be one-dimensional. He can have heat-seeking blinders on. I thought he was wrong in the Edwards and Menendez cases and overly aggressive, but not for any improper purpose.
Jack Smith is a complex figure, and I think Abby Lowell's take is spot on. Now, Abby Lowell, so people understand, has made a career representing high-profile Democrats, including right now Letitia James and John Bolton, recently Hunter Biden, so he's been a busy guy. I think Abby hits the nail on the head in that quote, which is that Jack Smith is not a partisan per se. He's not going into this with a D or an R behind him, but he is, to use Abby's phrase, a heat-seeking missile. And that caused him, I argue in the book, to overextend and to bend ordinary rules and procedures in order to rush the case and get Donald Trump tried artificially quickly so he could get him tried before the 2024 election. The record of that case makes it entirely clear. Now, I'll leave it to people to decide whether rushing to get someone tried intentionally before an election is political or not. Jack Smith says his motives were pure. I don't think the record quite supports that.
Not partisan, right? You don't find it to be partisan.
There's a difference between partisan and political. That's a really important point, John. I don't believe there's an argument that Jack Smith is pro-Democrat, pro-Republican, but it's undeniable that he was thinking about and acting with the election, the 2024 election in mind, in asking the judge to change ordinary rules and procedures. And I think it's wrong for him to deny that and claim, I had no awareness of the 2024 election. I think the record belies that.
I will say, as this interview went on, Jack Smith spoke a lot about how what's happening in the Justice Department now, in the second Trump administration, is like nothing he has ever seen. And along that line, he has been called to testify before the House Judiciary Committee, which of course is run by Jim Jordan, a very close ally of President Trump. What are Jack Smith's options here?
So first of all, I agree with all of those other things Jack Smith said. I think he was spot on about the importance of an independent Justice Department and the danger of retaliatory prosecutions. If Jack Smith gets subpoenaed by the House committee, he has three options. One, he can testify. Two, he can take the fifth. Look, he is known to be under investigation by DOJ. I want to say, as much as I've been critical of him, I don't see a scintilla of evidence that he committed a crime. And then third, he can contest the subpoena in court. He can go to a federal court and say, this is inappropriate, it's overbroad, there's no valid legislative purpose. So it'll be interesting to see if he agrees to testify or if he tries to fight it in some way.
Based on what you know of Jack Smith, do you think he would want to sit there in front of Congress and spar with them?
Jack Smith does not generally enjoy speaking in public. That's part of the reason that those clips are so interesting. But I also think he's not afraid or cowed by Jim Jordan or anyone else in Congress.
Ellie Honig, great to see you. Like I said, the book deals with many of these issues directly. When You Come at the King, order your copy right now.
Thanks.
Been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing.